Okay,
I can hear you though. There you are.
it looks like it's recording, which means it's time to get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Tzedek Tirdof, Tools for Transformation. This training, How to Have a Successful Advocacy Visit, is another installment of our monthly skills building trainings. Hopefully you've been on them. My name is Jody Rabhan, as Lindsay mentioned, and I'm Director of Washington Operations for the National Council of Jewish Women. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm proud to not only be on this call with Faith and with Carly, but to be one of NCJW's 3 federal lobbyists in the Washington office. In a nutshell, we represent all of you in Washington, D.C. When we're at coalition meetings, when we're meeting with the administration, maybe not this one, agency officials, lawmakers, we are there representing all of you. This training, How to Have a Successful Advocacy Visit, is but one of so many ways to raise your voices. And the skills that you'll learn in this training are transferable, so you can utilize them when you're meeting with anybody in which you're trying to share your views or to get your point across. But in particular, since the 2016 presidential election, we're seeing a lot of folks want to engage civically, either for the first time or in ways that they haven't previously been involved. And so this training is an effective way to engage in any issue that you might care about. One reminder for us all that NCJW is a 501c3 organization, which means that we work on issues and not candidates. So our training today is going to be nonpartisan. It's going to be a 501c3 friendly training. And we will share a 501c3 resource after the call, so you'll have that. It's got tips, do's, and don'ts in this realm. And lastly, before I turn it over to my fantastic colleagues, Faith Williams and Carly Manis, a bit of housekeeping. Lindsay just mentioned the chat box. It should be at the bottom of your screen, bottom right. If you have any questions for any of the speakers, just do us a favor and type your question into the chat box, and we'll address them at the end of the training. If you have any pressing issues that don't necessarily pertain to questions, but are along the lines of issues with Zoom, or you can't hear, things of that nature, go ahead and put those in the chat box too. We do have staff, Lindsay in particular, on this call who will be watching that chat box. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Faith Williams to get us started.
Thank you so much, Jody. I'm just going to try to change the slide here. There we go. All right, so hi, everyone. My name is Faith Williams. I'm the Senior Legislative Associate at National Council of Jewish Women. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And it's exciting to get the opportunity to share with you how to have a successful advocacy visit. So the way we've set up our training is kind of before, during, and after your visit, tips and what to expect and best practices, all that good stuff. So I'm going to start with all the things that happen before your visit. And like most things in life, the more work and preparation you do ahead of time, typically, the smoother the actual visit will go. So the first thing to decide is, who do you want to meet with? Do you want to talk about a specific issue, a piece of legislation, build a relationship with a specific elected official? All of these are legitimate reasons to have a visit, but it should help you decide who you want to meet with. In general, like all we're going to talk about will work just as well for visiting your federal elected official, your state elected official, your mayor, a city council member, a school board individual, all the way down to much more informal visits like talking to your rabbi or things like that. So in addition to deciding what issue and or piece of specific legislation you want to talk about, you need to decide what level you want to have that visit out: federal, state, local, all that sort of thing. Also, a point I think worth noting is that you can also use these techniques to have an advocacy visit with your state or federal agency. So like your state Justice Department, might not be called that, or your federal Health and Human Services agency. So after you decide who to meet with, you want to set up an appointment. And this can feel really challenging or amorphous, but it's actually just takes some persistence. So you need to call or email the office of the person you want to visit and just call them back, email them back, be persistent, put it in writing. You want to share with them when you're setting up the visit what you want to talk about, be specific, and how many people are going to be there with you. And you want to do that so that they can make sure the right staff person meets with you to discuss that issue. Frequently, especially at the, I would say, state and federal levels, you may not be meeting with your elected official, but rather a member of their staff. And that's okay. They're the experts in that issue. But you need to be clear about what you want to talk about so that you meet with the right person. Once you set up the appointment, it's always a best practice to email a day or two before and confirm the time and place, and print out and bring a copy of that confirmation with you so that you have it in writing, crystal clear that you have an appointment. All right, so you've decided who you want to visit. You set up an appointment with the person. Next is doing your research. And some of this you'll be doing kind of throughout the process, right? But the research is all about, what can you thank that person for, and what do you want your ask to be? So I start with thank you because I think these are words that, our elected officials at all levels don't really hear enough, and they go a long way toward having a congenial visit, even with someone with whom you may disagree with on a lot of things. There's typically something you can thank that person for, either in the issue you're there to talk about, in a different issue. Thank you for your support for the Jewish community in this area. Thank you for supporting this particular piece of legislation, things like that. And then you want to decide on your ask. And Carly will cover this more, but think about this as the specific thing you want to take away from the visit, knowing or having asked. So asking someone to co-sponsor or to support or to oppose, things like that. So the research is kind of crucial to having a successful visit. Also, before your visit, you want to assign roles. Now, of course, that assumes you are going with a group. If you're going just yourself, great, you get all the roles. But if you're going with a group, it makes sense to distribute roles ahead of time. So here are some examples of roles you can take. There's the leader. This person sets up the visit, introduces the participants, explains who NCJW is. There's the issue presenter. This is a person who might have more specific knowledge of the ask you're making, and they'll be the one to actually pitch that ask in the visit. You could have a note taker, someone to make sure they're tracking all questions that come up, any follow-up you're doing, someone who can kind of capture all that information. You could also have, if others are present, have someone be like your social media person, take a picture. You can have a person leave a folder, collect business cards, keep time. So these roles can kind of grow and expand depending on how many people you kind of have in your group. Then the kind of the last preparation piece is material. So think about what information you want to leave behind with the office or person you're meeting with. So these can be things like talking points, op-eds or letters to the editors, brochures. One really important thing, business cards, some way they can, and even if it's not an actual physical business card, some way that they can then get back in touch with you. So even if it's just a contact sheet, it's better than nothing. And then kind of the last piece, once you've researched and decided your ask and assigned roles, is to practice. Practice makes perfect, although, no one's perfect, right? But we can kind of make the ask more smooth. We can practice our introductions, do it with a friend, do it with your group, do it in the mirror. So practicing is really important. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carly to talk about the visit itself. There we go.
Great. Thanks so much, Faith. Hopefully folks can hear me, and you'll let me know if you can't. My name is Carly Manis. I use she, her, hers is my pronouns. And in the Washington office, I manage our federal and grassroots advocacy around reproductive health, rights, and justice, as well as general health care. And I'm really excited to be here with you all today talking about advocacy visits, specifically what goes on during an advocacy visit, which is really the exciting, juicy part of doing advocacy and why I personally love advocacy so much. So one big piece of that is go with the flow. Advocacy visits are really unpredictable. So if you have a meeting with someone and, we're sort of setting it up as the ideal meeting that you're going to be sitting in an office, that you're going to meet with the person who you were intending to meet with, but that's absolutely not what always happens. Things are always wild on the Hill or in your state capital or even in city government. So you might show up to a meeting and you might end up meeting with someone that you weren't supposed to be meeting with, or you might end up meeting in the hallway instead of in an office. So just being as flexible as possible and going with the flow is a really key piece of a successful advocacy visit. The next piece is your opening. So once you actually get, once you've done everything that Faith has shared, you already set up your visit, you know who you're meeting with, you have all your materials, you're going to go in and you're going to want to introduce yourself. So you show up for your assigned appointment time, of course, always going to be early, 5-10 minutes early if you can, and then you're going to introduce yourself and who's in the room. And with that, you're of course going to say your name, what organization you're with, which would be the National Council of Jewish Women in your local section. When you're saying your name, also make sure to include your pronouns. And if the person that you're speaking with doesn't know what pronouns are, feel free to explain what pronouns are and why they're important for us to share in affirming all gender identities. And if you yourself need some help on how to explain pronouns, just reach out to any one of us on staff, and we're happy to get you some materials on how to do that. And then, once you explain who you are, a bit about NCJW and why you're coming as an NCJW advocate, you're going to want to reiterate why you're there, what issue you came specifically to talk about, and what you might be asking that day of your representative, of your local council person, and then, of course, saying thank you when appropriate. So we always, no matter how we feel about their stance on something, no matter, if they say yes or no to us that day, we always want to thank people for their time. So the next is going to be the ask. And that comes up a lot during your preparation. You're going to show up to your advocacy visit with a really clear idea of what you are asking for from that person. So, let's take gun violence prevention, for example. You're asking to have a bill that bans, selling guns to people under the age of 21. That's your ask. You're asking for them to sign a bill that might already be in the House. Or in a legislative body, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to make sure that your ask is really clear. You are asking them to say yes to a bill that bans minors from buying firearms. So you're stating your issue clearly, and you're going to state what exactly you want out of them that day during your ask. And in your ask, one thing else that you want to incorporate are personal stories. How has gun violence affected you in your community? And you don't necessarily need to have a personal story yourself. But if you know someone in your community who has a story, let them know that you're going on this advocacy visit, and ask them if it's okay if you share their story, because you're using it for the purpose of advocacy, for doing something good with their story, to let people know that these things really impact our community, and that a no vote on this bill and then a yes vote on this bill is really important to us, because it has great impact on the people that this person is representing. So again, being really clear on what your ask is. Are they going to co-sponsor something? Are you asking them to vote yes or no on something? Are you asking them to speak out publicly on an issue that maybe there isn't a piece of legislation around, but you need them to be a strong public advocate? So many different things that can be your ask, but being really clear on what that is really critical. And then you want to listen really closely to the response to your ask. So once you've shared a bit about the issue, once you've given a bit of background, you've shared some personal stories with them, you want to then pose the question. You want to say, will your boss, will my representative vote yes or no on the, will they vote no on this bill, or will they vote yes on this bill, depending on what you want to get out of it. And that sort of makes it really clear that they need to give you a response of some sort, and sort of begs the question clearly, so that they can't sort of skirt around and say, well, that we support, gun violence prevention no matter what, kind of thing. It makes it clear that they have to give you an answer on that. Another piece of your ask is that you want your ask, again, to be so clear that you're never going to go into an advocacy visit with more than 1 or 2 asks of a representative. So don't go in wanting to talk about 5 different issues. You want to be really clear and talk about really 1 to 2 issues max, with really 1 to 2 clear asks. And then the wrap up. So you will review out any outstanding questions and any outstanding questions that you had. Make sure that you thank them when you're leaving, head out the door, and then you're going to, of course, debrief with the folks who were in your group, but you never, I'm going to hold that. We're going to get to debrief in a minute. So make sure that all questions are answered before you head out the door. Make sure that you leave your leave behind material, which Faith talked about. So you're giving them that folder that has more information on the bill, more information on the issue, whatever you... I hear a barking dog, which dogs are also maybe sometimes welcome on our advocacy visits. Who knows? We can bring our pets along, could make it more friendly. But we are going to leave materials behind, and you're going to want to carry a business card on you if you have a business card. So if you don't have a business card, feel free to write down your email address on a piece of paper or something, but definitely try to have some if you do. Hand over your business card, hand over the material, and say thank you and walk out the door. Once you're out the door, you're going to want to get pretty far away from the building. You're never going to want to debrief with your advocacy team right outside the representative's office or wherever you were just chatting with someone. You're going to want to leave the building, go to a nearby coffee shop, do a phone call later. But within the first hour after a visit, you do want to debrief. So debrief away from the building. And then make sure that you absolutely follow up with the office, if possible, the same day with an email or a phone call. Email is always usually preferable. So you already got the business card from the person that you met with. You're going to write a quick email, and during your role assignments, you'll assign that role as well. So with that, that is what happens during an advocacy visit. I'm going to turn it back over to Jody to tell us what happens after the advocacy visit.
Thanks, Carly. And we can't say it enough. You heard it from Faith and you heard it from Carly. You see it on your screen. Say thank you after the visit. As Carly mentioned, as soon as possible. It's great to send a thank you note. Ideally with any follow-up information that you promise to share. But even if you don't have that ready, it's worth sending a thank you note and saying it's coming. We're going to get that information to you, but thank you so much for your time. It really goes a long way. We can't stress it enough. One person should fill out an advocacy visit report form and return it to your section. We have that for you. It will be a part of the follow-up materials that you will receive after the call. But if you've been to Washington Institute or if you've done this in your state, you've probably seen this form before. Know that if you're meeting with somebody on the federal level, a lawmaker, an agency official, that Inc., NCJW Inc. would love a copy of that too. So be sure to send it our way. If you're not sure who to send it to, Lindsay is always a great person to send information to, and she'll get it to the right person. Another just key piece of information that is in the after the visit bucket is staying in contact with the staffer and building the relationship. Whether it is somebody at the local level or somebody at the federal level, you just never know where they're going to go next. They tend to rise up through the ranks in the office, go to different offices, and part of being an effective advocate is the relationships that you build. It's through those relationships that you're able to get in the door, be heard, exchange information. Can't stress enough that importance or that point of really staying in touch with those staffers because they really are and can be your gateway to information, which is what it's all about. So that's sort of in a nutshell the sort of beginning to end of planning your visit, having your visit, and after the visit.
Great, thank you. So now that you've heard kind of before, during, and after, some of this you've heard already, but it's worth repeating some best practices for an advocacy visit. So I'll start. You want to be early. Carly mentioned this, and it relates to that kind of staying flexible, going with the flow bit. I would get to a visit at least 5 minutes early. That gives them scramble time. If you need to meet somewhere else, you can head in that direction and, get started on time. And it's just obviously in all things in life, it's a measure of respecting other people's time and the time of the people you're doing a visit with. So be early.
Yep. And never make up a response if you don't know the answer to a question. So let's say that you get a question on a particular piece of legislation that you're asking someone to vote a certain way on. If you don't know the answer, that is absolutely okay, but don't make one up. So just let them know that you'll get back to them. You'll go back to the appropriate folks. You'll get the right answer, and then you'll follow up with them later. Either in your thank you email you can send, and by the way, I got the answer for you kind of thing, but do not make up an answer. It never goes well.
Use pivot language. 3 words to remember in your visits, whether you're meeting with a staffer or a lawmaker. I will say I have rarely had a lobby visit where we sort of stay on track. Oftentimes you're in an office and they say, oh, you're Jewish, I want to talk to you about Israel. Or, oh, since you're here, we have somebody else in our office who's working on a particular piece of legislation, blah, blah, blah. And your visit can take on, total life of its own. So having some pivot language in your back pocket is always a good idea. It could be, good question. I appreciate you bringing that up, but in reality it's this, or yes, that's a really important issue, but today we're here to talk about, X, Y, and Z. In addition to what you're saying, we also want to talk about, this, that, and the other thing. So having some of those good sort of pivot phrases and being at the ready and not afraid to use them will be incredibly helpful as you engage in advocacy visits.
Great. Practice time management. So at the outset, you'll have an idea of how long your appointment is. Usually around half an hour, could be a little shorter, occasionally a little longer. So what you want to do is make sure that your timekeeper, or if it's just you are keeping an eye on the clock and making sure you're able to hit all the asks that you want to hit and still leave a few minutes at the end to say thank you and to distribute material. I'll also say that for group visits, where you might know that a member of your group is particularly chatty, emphasizing time management is a strategy you can use ahead of the actual visit and kind of give your group a warning, like you have 3 minutes to make this ask, and then I will be gently and respectfully cutting you off, that sort of thing. It's sometimes easier said than done, but that's also a key part of time management.
Great. The next one is personal stories. As I said earlier, personal stories are so useful in advocacy. They show our, people who are making decisions about our lives, that the things that they're voting on and deciding on impact real people in their communities, and that they really do have an impact. And so we share personal stories to relay that message, and it sort of gets to the heart/empathy piece that moves people to support the things that we are trying to get them to support. But one important thing to note about the stories is that it's okay if we don't have our own. If you do, it's really always good to share your own story. If you don't have your own, talk to other folks in your community and see if they would be okay with you sharing their story for the purpose of advocacy.
Thanks. The next one is stay nonpartisan. As I mentioned at the outset, that NCJW is a 501c3 organization, so wear your NCJW hat at all times. You could walk into a meeting, the lawmaker could be there, maybe in your personal life you are involved in re-election efforts for that person. Don't wear your button, don't engage in conversation around it, wear your NCJW hat.
Great. Ask before posting. This has to do with social media, and it is what it sounds like. So one fun way to lift up what you're doing is to post a picture on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever. If you are taking a picture with the elected official or a member of their staff, you need to ask if it's okay before you post it. It sounds really basic, but when you actually ask, you might be surprised at how many people actually say no. So it's good to ask first.
Great. And then the last one is say thank you, which we talked a ton about. Saying thank you is so important. While they absolutely have an obligation to meet with you, we all know that we get further when we're nice to people. So it's really important to thank them for their time, even if we are totally opposed to how they're voting or that we know that they're not going to support us. Just saying thank you for their time can really go a long way. It can keep relationships good, and it means that you can go back in the future with more asks.
Now we're going to move on to our next slide, role playing. We're going to set up a couple of scenarios. And the first scenario, we've got State Senator Carly and our advocate, Faith. The issue is opposing 20-week abortion bans. We're going to do a little role play, and then we're going to come back together as a group in this webinar format and talk about what went well and what could have gone better. All right. Senator Carly and advocate Faith, take it away.
Great.
Hi,
Advocate Faith.
Hi, Senator Carly. Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me. Are we meeting here in your office? If so, can I sit down?
Yeah. Sure. Thanks so much, Faith. I love meeting with folks in the community. We're actually not going to be in this office because there are other folks meeting here. We're actually going to go meet out in the hallway a little bit further down. So just follow me and we'll meet out there. I hope standing is okay, but also we don't have a choice. So that's what we're going to do.
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm so okay. Yeah, I'll follow you. But how will I take notes? I mean, I guess it's okay. I don't want to not meet with you, but this is
I don't have a lot of time, Faith.
Stressful.
Yeah. Let's move on. I don't have much time right now. I'm assuming that you're here to talk about Israel. So, what do what about it? Y'all are doing good stuff.
I emailed in my meeting request that I actually, Israel is an important issue, and CJ, National Council of Jewish Women, does have some work in Israel, but I'm here to talk about 20-week abortion bans. But if you want to talk about Israel, I mean, I can try.
Oh, no, I mean, hey, if you want to talk about abortion, we can definitely talk about abortion. What about it? You know how it's pretty public how I feel, so I'm not, what do you want?
So I first want to say thank you for your time again. I know, as you say here, you have a public opinion on this, and I disagree with it, but I appreciate how you voted a couple months ago on a bill for a local homeless shelter. So thank you for that. But getting back to why I'm...
Oh, yeah. Of course, you know that I really care about the community.
Yeah, so I'm glad you say that because I'm here to talk to you because you support legislation in the state Senate that would ban abortion after 20 weeks. And I just think that's a really bad idea. And I don't want you to support that bill.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry that you feel that's a bad idea, but, a lot of our community really supports it. We know that, fetal pain is a thing, and babies are babies. And so it's wrong to kill them. And that's a value of our community. And I think it's abhorrent that you don't think that too, that you don't believe that abortion should be banned at 20 weeks. I guess we disagree on that, but I'm curious as someone who believes in this, how many people in our community actually even need abortions after 20 weeks? Is that even really a thing?
100 need them. 100 need them right now.
100 people.
100 people need them.
All right, Faith. If you say so.
Say so. And I think you're abhorrent for holding your view. Don't call me abhorrent. You're abhorrent. 100 people need things.
Well, Faith, I think that's time for today. I appreciate you coming in. Definitely, I'm not going to vote the way that you wanted, but thanks so much for your time, and keep being a community advocate.
Yes, I'm leaving.
How about a round of applause? Round one of role play. Thank you, Advocate Faith, and our state senator, Carly. Who wants to throw out a few things of what went well in that visit? An illustration of some of the things that we talked about. Did you pick up anything that went well in that visit?
Faith acted so flustered.
Do me a favor. Hi, Beth. Will you do us a favor? Introduce yourselves with your name and your section so we know who you are.
Oh, Beth Nadgeberg, Chicago North Shore.
Great. Thanks, Beth. And say that again.
Oh.
Beth, can you say your comment again?
Repeat your comment.
Oh, Beth Nadgeberg, Chicago North Shore. Faith acted so flustered that what am I going to take my notes on? That she should have had a clipboard along to begin, something like that to begin with.
So that's a what could have gone better.
Well, okay, that's right. Okay.
and what about
Wait, Jody. So Kate wrote into the chat.
Great.
And Kate, if in the chat you want to remind me where you are. I know I wrote it down. Something that went well is Faith kept on topic.
Terrific. I didn't pull the chat up, but I see more in there. Right. Faith absolutely kept on topic, despite, as Beth noted, being a little flustered, for sure. What else went well?
She started with a thank you.
Who's that?
Nancy Fetterman.
Oh, hi, Nancy. And Nancy, tell everybody where you're from.
California, San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay, thank you. I see Jill Exier said she thanked the senator. Great. Any other things that went well before we talk about what could have gone a little bit better?
Kate also chatted in, and Kate's from Long Beach. Faith had done research to find something to complement, like the homeless vote, and knew the senator's record.
Absolutely. What about what could have gone better?
Oh, wait, I have one more from Stacy. Despite being in the hallway, Faith continued with the meeting.
Great. Which is, that's a thing. That's a real thing, especially if you're new. It can be quite jarring to be like, what? I have to stand and take notes, holding my notebook and, look and have a conversation. Especially if you're somebody who gets easily thrown. That's a real thing. What about what didn't go so well or could have gone better?
But should I repeat? She should have had a notepad easily available.
Thank you, Beth. What about that number Faith threw out, 100? 100 people need 20-week abortion bans.
Don't need.
Whatever your number was, do we think that was a real number? Or do we think Faith maybe just made it up? Advocate Faith made it up. Thank you, Kate. Have strong sources and citations. So as we heard on this webinar, you don't want to make things up. There is nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. That's a great question. I will follow up with the information, those exact facts and figures. Lindsay, are there some others that we missed?
It probably wouldn't hurt to know why those late-term abortions happen and have some information on that.
Maybe even a personal story.
Or two.
That
or
can
10.
tell that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see Jill Lexier just mentioned that. Can everybody see what's going on in the chat?
What's going on in the chat is, I'm just going to read it. So Jill said she should have had research. And Kate's great new suggestion, bring a written document on your position and the reasons, maybe some stats. And Jill added it about the personal story. And Kate also chimed in, don't be confrontational, don't name call, even if they don't.
Yeah, I think I can speak from experience that we've been in many lobby visits where we literally use the phrase, we'll just have to agree to disagree, and then we move on. Mm-hmm. Calling your elected official or a staff member abhorrent does not help. Never gets you where you want to go.
But sure is fun in role play.
Okay, great.
Other thoughts, or we're good? We're going to move on.
Okay, so let's set up scenario 2.
Actually, I had a general thought.
Sorry.
I was having a hard time. I just felt, and this is something to learn how to do. I mean, I think generally Faith just lost control of the meeting.
Yeah.
So the senator was controlling the meeting, and where it was, how long we met. I mean, generally they are going to, but I think that's one of the challenges of how to sort of have more control. And honestly, I've had this personal experience with Peter Roscom, who is, not my favorite, to put it bluntly. But yes, he pulled the, hey, let's just walk. And, so these things do happen. I've had personal experience with this. And it is hard. You sort of feel like you're always on the defensive and you're not really controlling the meeting and able to control your agenda. So.
And sometimes it's probably designed to put you on the defensive.
Absolutely.
So you need to go in with a understanding that you can't win with a defensive posture.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So let's queue up another scenario. Same issue, opposing 20-week abortion bans. This time, Jody will play a staffer for the state senator, and Carly will play the advocate. So just like we did for the first time, let's watch what they do, and then we'll get back together and talk about what went well and what could have gone better.
Great. Hey, I'm here to meet with Jody. It's so great to get to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking it out of your day to chat with me about 20-week abortion bans.
Sure. And tell me your name again.
Sure, yes. I'm so sorry. My name is Carly. I'm with the National Council of Jewish Women. I am a constituent of the representative, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am one of our state advocates, and we are a 125-year-old national advocacy organization of Jewish women, and it's really a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I'm so happy you're here today. I've been looking forward to meeting with you, and definitely, they put you with the right staffer. I work on. I think you're here to talk about abortion. Tell me exactly the issue you want to talk about,
Yes.
because you know that the senator Hannah G. Solomon is absolutely pro-choice. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes. And yeah, right. Which is why, we are so grateful to all that she does, as a representative for our wonderful community, and state. And so, I'm here to talk specifically about the 20-week ban that is coming up, for a vote. And I have seen some things that have just said that she's thinking about not voting for it. And I want to chat with you a bit more about why that is, because the 20-week ban, is, sorry, that she might vote for it. The 20-week ban is really, really harmful to our community. Abortions after 20 weeks, while they are not the majority of abortions, absolutely impact people here in our community. And there are so many reasons why people do have a need to access abortion after 20 weeks. So I'm curious, does the senator plan on voting for this bill? Because that would be really harmful to our community.
well, I have to tell you, Carly, another reason why I'm really glad that you came in is, she is pro-choice, but she's on the fence with this one. I mean, she is just not hearing. Honestly, you're the first one who's been in the office. We're hearing from so many constituents who are, saying vote for this. So, is this really a thing? Does this happen to one person? I mean, I never
Sure.
heard about it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. Thank you. I think that the reason that you're not hearing from a lot of people is because abortion is so stigmatized, and people who do access abortion after 20 weeks don't feel like they are able to share their stories and be powerful advocates, because there's so much stigma and shame around it. So I think that's why you're probably not hearing from a lot of people. And if you do want to hear from more people, I am more than happy to set up some more advocacy visits, because there are a lot of people in the community who do feel very, very, very passionately against 20-week abortion bans, because we know how harmful they are for our community. 20-week abortions, abortions past 20 weeks happen all the time right here in our community. And there are so many reasons why. I myself, I'm an abortion doula here in our community, which means that I've supported tons of people during their abortion procedures. And I've been with over about 2-3 dozen people who have had to access abortion past 20 weeks. So I've been with them there, and their stories are all so varied. There are so many reasons why people access abortion after 20 weeks. They sometimes don't have the money to pay earlier, and they have to take time to actually get the money. A lot of people didn't know that they were pregnant. Fetal anomalies happen all the time. People's life circumstances change. So there are tons and tons of reasons as to why, and making a blank piece of legislation that bans them outright will really be harmful.
Carly, I'm definitely going to take you up on your offer. It's super helpful. I certainly didn't realize, I'm not sure that the senator is aware, and I think hearing from more people in the community, and I understand what you're saying about it being stigmatized. So if there's a way that we could do it so that they would feel comfortable, I think that would help the senator a lot. The other question I have for you, though, is, don't the babies feel pain at that point? I know this is something that the senator is concerned about.
Sure. So if you look at the majority of research says that, fetal pain is undetectable at that point in time. But really, that's not what I'm here to talk about. It's more really about what the women who are trying to access services are. So, it doesn't, regardless, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. But I'm more than happy to get you some literature on that. I don't have it with me, but I can definitely follow up in an email with it.
Carly, that would be great. I definitely want to see the information that you have, learn more about this bill. I will definitely talk to the senator about it. And if you could set up an opportunity for us to meet with some other folks who've had the procedure, who know about it, because again, this is it's all sort of news to me, and I think it will be to the senator.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So I'm going to leave this folder here. It has some more reading materials, and it does have some personal stories from people in our community. So feel free to read through that. And then I'll also follow up with an email that sets up a separate time for us to meet. I'll gather some community activists and advocates and people who have experienced abortion in our community past 20 weeks, and we can all meet. And I'll also send you information about, the science behind fetal pain capability. So I will get all that to you after I leave here today. And I just want to thank you so much again for taking the time. This really was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. So nice to meet you.
You as well.
All right, great job, staffer and advocate. So a pretty different visit than what we witnessed before. Who wants to share what they thought went well?
Hi, now I'll do it the right time. This is Beth Nanchberg in Chicago. She pivoted very well when the legislator said, "Oh, does the baby feel pain?" She said, "That's a good question. It doesn't seem that way. Let's get to what we were actually talking about."
Absolutely, that pivoting language was key. I also want to. Looks like Stacy had typed that into the chat as well, and also a comment from Kate that said, good to remind them you are a constituent, and to provide an overview of NCJW, and to say how many people are behind you on your position. And the offer to set up more meetings was a good point. So all that's true. I will say sometimes if you're meeting with someone at the state level or at the federal level, and if they're like your state rep or your federal rep, and it's like a group lobby visit, you might not be their constituent, but what you can say is something like, we have a section in your area with 1,000 members, or whatever the case may be. What else? Who else wants to volunteer some thoughts on what went well? I see from Jill, good personal stories. From Stacy, the promise to send more materials and bring in more advocates, so that follow-up. Anything else? Anything that folks felt could have gone better? I mean, there's always room for improvement, even in our excellent examples.
This isn't something that she could do better, but she did seem to have lots of citations and all of her materials in order.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Jill, interesting point. Could have anticipated the fetal pain question. So that's true. I mean, part of your research can be thinking and kind of going over the opposition's arguments. And so at least being prepared to mention, for it to be brought up, even if you do what Carly did, which is, I can send you some things after this visit. That's great. Stacy wants to vote Hannah G. Solomon for president. I think we can all get behind that.
Except we can't as a 501c3 organization.
Because it's imaginary.
We can because it's imaginary. I will say, and it came up in one of the tips about time management. Sometimes in the beginning of a meeting, it's good to say how, senator, rep, staff, whoever, how much time do you have to meet with me? Just to anticipate kind of how long you can go into your stories and talking points.
I think speaking of time management, we're going to close out this conversation, though, of course, feel free to put more things in the group chat. And I'm not going to reshare my screen at this moment. If I did, you would see a slide that said Q&A. So that is what we're here for. So Carly, I'll turn it over to you to do some Q&A.
Great. Thanks so much, Faith. So we did get some questions in the chat, in the registration form prior. So I'm going to read a couple of those, and I'm going to actually have Faith and Jody help me out and give some of those answers, and then we'll open it up for folks now if you have questions. So one of those questions that I really liked was, what is the relative effectiveness of lobbying one-on-one or with a group? And if you are going to lobby with a group, what size is most effective? So Jody or Faith, take it away.
Jody, why don't you start?
Sure. I was going to say we can all share this question, and I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer. There are plenty of times when we've got plans to go up to the Hill and we've got a group going with us, whether it's folks from this office or coalition partners, and it ends up being a meeting of one and it's a one-on-one meeting. Better to have the meeting than to cancel the meeting, I will say. Oftentimes, though, having other folks there is great, particularly if you're trying to get a point across that there's broad support for an issue. It's great to have NCJW, whether whatever the point is that you're trying to get across. So there are times, I'll use judicial noms for an example, where we try to bring up interfaith groups because typically offices are not hearing from faith communities. We want to show that there is broad support for our viewpoint, and it's not just the Jews. There are the Episcopalians or the Catholics or, this group or that group. So it often says a lot by having different types of folks with you. You don't have too many people. Oftentimes there isn't enough room. As we learned today, there are plenty of times when you are standing in the hallway. The offices are small. Many times staff will specify, like, we need to know how many people are coming because we only have room for 5, for example, which is a large visit often for Hill folks. And if it's larger, they'll try to get a room, but they can't often. And you want to have an opportunity for people to sit, be able to speak and speak on behalf of their organization. So having a handful of folks is definitely better than a large amount. But Faith, why don't you share? If you've got
Sure.
thoughts.
I think one thing I'll say about large groups, particularly if you're all from NCJW, if you're all from the same section, or at Washington Institute from the same state, that sort of thing, the larger your group, the more planning you need to do ahead of time about roles and assigning roles. So in a large group, truly, not everyone should speak outside of just saying who they are and where they're from. And that's really important to help keep the visit on track and to have it in a timely fashion. So it's possible that if you're going with a big group of NCJW members, all you get to say is your name and your pronoun and where you're from, and that has to be okay. And oftentimes if we go with coalitions, as Jody mentioned, we'll always meet, somewhere kind of nearby the office, but outside the office 10, 15 minutes ahead of time and quickly assign roles because that same principle applies. We can't all speak for 30 minutes as much as we might want to. So it gets down to assigning roles, I think.
Can I just throw something out there? So this is thinking a little bit more in terms of organizing campaigns. So we're very much thinking about going to the lawmaker's office or site, but a lot of organizations will often invite a lawmaker to them through a community meeting, which is definitely a tactic of using lobbying and making direct asks to a lawmaker. And so in that regard, you would have a much larger number of people to show that constituents are there and listening. So it sort of depends on your tactic, to be quite honest. And sometimes when you bring 50 people to a lawmaker's office and you have social media around that, it has a different type of pressure. So it just depends on your approach. I did want to put that out there, but all of the points Faith said are very relevant to the number of people you have.
Great, thanks all. I'm going to throw out one more question so that we can then open it up to people on the phone. The question is how to handle someone who doesn't share your position. So Faith and Jody, if you both want to weigh in, and I'll weigh in as well after.
Sure, I can start this time. If we only met with people who agreed with us on everything, we would have no one to meet with. So inevitably, take it as a given that you're going to meet with people who disagree with you on issues you really care about. The key is to be polite, to still find something to say thank you for, even if it's thanking them for their time. And I think we try to kind of walk that line of pushing what we believe and being upfront about that. And then ultimately doing exactly what I've actually seen and heard Jody do in difficult lobby visits, which is, well, on this issue or this point, we'll just need to agree to disagree and I will follow up in X amount of time. So I think that's some of my tips. Jody?
I'm going to let Carly, if Carly has anything to say.
Yes, I do. I think the thing that I would say is finding common ground where you can. So, just like Faith said, Jody does often is, we'll agree to disagree on this issue. There usually is some sort of common ground somewhere. A good example is the mock visit that Faith and I did. Faith thanked me as someone who definitely did not agree with her on abortion, thanked me for my position on homelessness and housing in the community. So you want to find somewhere to agree, and even on an issue where you might feel like you're total opposites. I feel like this comes up often in immigration. You might feel differently about how to approach immigration as a whole, but if you can get to a place of where we both believe that immigrants in the United States deserve basic human rights, that's a really baseline place to start. But just finding somewhere where you can share some sort of connection.
I agree wholeheartedly.
So let's open it up.
Great. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Sorry. Sorry. I'm trying to keep myself muted. But yes, we're going to open it up now for folks. If you are on the phone and you have the ability to talk, feel free to ask a question. Otherwise, feel free to chat in your question, and Lindsay will read it out to us.
This is Jill X here. I have a question. Well, I actually hope in November we'll have some new legislators to meet with. Is there any value in going in with the purpose of sort of introductory only, or is it better, do you think, to pick one or two things and make a very clear ask as a way of starting what you hope is going to be an ongoing relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like that one's perfect for Jody if you want to answer it, because Jody feels very strongly about introductory meetings, which have been really wonderful for us here in DC.
I do. I think there is sort of no bad excuse for having a meeting, whether you are there to introduce yourself or there to talk about a specific issue. You're building a relationship. You're getting to know them. Telling them about you, who you are, and it's the start of a relationship, and that can lead to all kinds of great work together. We will often go as a team, the legislative team, up to the Hill just to introduce ourselves. If it's somebody who's new on Capitol Hill, new staffer, an office we haven't met with, and we should go. We should get in there and we should meet with them. They don't know who we are and what we do. And let them know that we're a resource to them. And of course, the key is, beyond that, is to stay in touch and do the follow-up. Send them information, remind them that you're there, and maybe pop back in when you're on the Hill next time to meet with them. Of course, if you have an ask, that's great too.
Okay, thanks. That helps. Thank you.
Great. Faith, do you want to add anything, or can we take the next question? We're going to take one more.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Great. All right, let's do one more question. Do you have over the phone? Yep, please.
Okay. I live in a very red state, and a lot of our legislators won't even meet personally with constituents. They will only meet, they do town hall meetings on the phone, or they will only do things over the web. So how do you suggest we reach out to people who won't even meet with them?
I'm curious of others on the phone, because I see a lot of head nods that confronted this problem. And Stacey, I'm not trying to avoid an answer.
No. It's a very difficult situation. So
We don't even get town halls. It's even worse.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what do you all do? How do you get in touch with those offices? How do you share your view?
We write postcards.
Not
We
postcard.
leave phone calls.
Right.
We leave messages.
Emails, leave messages.
But I've signed up even to receive newsletters from our senators. One of them won't even respond, won't even send their newsletter to me as a constituent. And I'm not an aggressive person out there. I'm just trying to learn how to go about this process.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah. There is.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Hello? Sorry.
Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There is sort of the thought that, with limited time and limited resources, how much energy do you want to spend on somebody that you absolutely will get absolutely no traction with, So I want to throw that out too.
It's a good point. I'll share with you just a personal experience of trying to get in the door of Senator McConnell's office, where they wouldn't even tell me the name of the staffer, so I couldn't set up appointments. And this went on for months and months and months. I even went, Lindsay was with me, I think, and walked into the office and tried to get the name of the staffer, drop off materials. I could
out
get
of the building.
right. I could get nothing except, I left my materials. And then was able to get the name of the person that I needed through another staffer on the Hill. So, somebody with whom I've met with many times, and I could reach out and say, like, hey, I'm having a hard time with this office. Can you help? It still didn't get me a meeting, but it did get me a name and some email exchanges. But,
Are you able to leave your business card?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to add, so Kate has added a great tip in the chat. Maybe use social media or print media. And what I want to add on is lobby visits, or these visits with your lawmakers, are one tactic to getting your message across to lawmakers. So, whether it's raising awareness in social media or print media and letting people know, like, these are all the ways you've tried to reach out to your lawmaker and they're refusing to meet with you and you're a constituent, or like let public, like, get the word out if they're not willing to meet with you, and get your issues out there in other ways. And media is a great tactic to do that.
Social media in particular, but that's a great tip, Kate.
And then
this
Kate
is
added
Carly.
on to a public event they are attending.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Another one is to actually find out where they are and go where they are. Literally meet them, and you're not going to necessarily bird dog them, but if they're at a social event in the community, feel free to just walk right up to them. You have that right. You're doing it respectfully, but feel free to walk up to them, introduce yourself, and you are setting up yourself in your own advocacy meeting on the spot.
Well, and then one thing that they've done down here, when we couldn't get anywhere near Cruz, we had like 100 people show up on a Tuesday morning marching in front of his office with signs about health care, and some of them were, made up with like zombies or bleeding or whatever, carrying signs, and we got an awful lot of attention for it. So, maybe didn't meet with him, but we got a lot of attention to our issue from the public.
Be creative, think outside the box.
I think with that, we'll wrap up questions and wrap up the webinar.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry, my computer just straight up froze. So give me a moment. So sorry. All right. Hopefully you can see a slide that says closing. Okay, so thank you all so much for your time. In the next couple of days, you will be getting an email that has an evaluation for this call. Let us know what you think so we can make it better. A recording, and some follow-up materials, including tips for a successful advocacy visit, our 501c3 Q&A document, and a link to our advocacy report form, which Jody had mentioned previously. If you have any questions about this training or about the 5T trainings in general, contact Ari Conrad at ari@ncgwdc.org. Thank you again so much for your time.